Hello, my name is Francis and I'm really happy that you're taking a moment to watch this video. The aim of these few minutes together is to give you more information on the way I design my lectures. But first, a few additional details about me. I was born in 1950, I started traveling in 52, and from then on I lived as a child and then as a teenager in Lisbon, Tokyo, London, Rome, Venice, and France, where I finally settled. This life abroad is obviously quite an asset, both in terms of sheer knowledge of places, as well as in terms of capacity to interact easily with other nationalities and cultures. My father was a diplomat, which allowed me to meet interesting people. As an example, I had the privilege to meet Peggy Guggenheim in her Venetian palace for an afternoon tea, but I also met Cousteau or the Paris Opera Ballet and many others. This is quite an asset for lectures, as I have good foundations on which to build meaningful presentations. I worked in several fields. I started with architecture and urban planning. I then switched to the computing field, which was just starting. I was part of the evolution from the very first computers with 8 inches floppy disks to the latest internet developments. I held all the positions in that field, from the discovery to programmer, analyst, and project leader. I was then recruited by a United Nations specialized agency, the International Labour Office, and worked in its Geneva headquarters for 25 years until 2008. My department, which was the Official Relations and Meetings branch, was in charge, among other things, of the organization of ministerial level meetings in several regions worldwide. I thus traveled to a number of countries in Asia, the Americas, and Europe. Finally, thanks to my skills in various languages, I have been acting as a sworn interpreter to a French appeals court for English and to a lower court for Italian and Spanish. An important aspect of these two jobs for a lecture assignment is that I'm used to be on stage, speaking in front of judges, journalists, diplomats, and other distinguished guests. During my professional life, I never stopped traveling. Besides the numerous business trips, I visited a good part of Europe in a camper with wife, children, and dog. From the end of the 80s, I switched mainly to cruises, and I have now around 50 boarding cards in my archives, the majority being transatlantic crossings. All right, now let's look at the way I build my lectures. Here are a few examples that I took from a presentation of Ajaccio in Corsica. You probably noticed that the subtitles are in French, English, and Spanish, as per the request of the cruise line based on the guest's mother tongue. I also recorded some local music at the beginning and end of the lecture. I often start by locating the port of call and its geographical area. Here we see the mountains as well as the size of the island of Corsica. You know that knowing what happened in the past allows to understand the present time. On this slide, for instance, I give some historical information about a Napoleon's relative who bought thousands of artworks which are now property of a museum in Ajaccio, and this museum passengers can visit it. When dealing with historical background, I display the years so that guests can follow the sequence of events. I avoid giving the full date, day, month, year, as the lectures are not courses. And by the way, I'm absolutely unable to remember dates apart from my own birth date. Let's go to another part of the world, Doha in Qatar. The general idea of that presentation was to emphasize the parallel presence of futuristic architecture and town planning with centuries of old traditions. Notice the presence of the musical introduction. As an example of contemporary architecture, this is the Qatar National Museum, which was opened in March 2019. It was designed by Jean Nouvel, the French architect, with a shape of desert rose and using the latest techniques in terms of precast concrete. In the same city, a few meters away, the Falcon Souk, where locals spend up to thousands of dollars to buy their preferred pet. We are now in Jordan, and it is an occasion to talk about a strategic problem for all the countries of that region, water, and an essential project that has been a subject for negotiations for years, the Red Sea-Dead Sea water pipeline project. You see that I go far beyond the port lecture as such. I also try to relate the destination with people's life or modern history, such as the Lawrence of Arabia film and the post-war conference of 1919, when the actual Lawrence was with King Faisal. Let's head back to the Mediterranean on the island of Rhodes. Whenever I can, I tell funny stories related to the itinerary. This is the case for Julius Caesar. He was captured by pirates going to Rhodes Island. And well, that was too bad for them because when the ransom was paid after 38 days, he had warned them that they would be crucified. And indeed, he came back to the island where he had been held. He brought them back and had them all crucified. Food and drinks are essential components of a country. I always add a few slides to present well-known or lesser-known specialties. Here is a talk about Lisbon. I present a relative of the Spanish tapas, which is called petiscos, small and tasty snacks which are served in Portuguese bars. I also introduce the Vinho Verde, most exported Portuguese wine after port wine. I always include a number of slides related to Mother Nature. Fauna and flora have quite often great surprises for those who take time to open their eyes. I'm particularly fond of this diver on the left, who seems to have an interesting conversation with this big grouper. In this Madeira slideshow, I also talk about the flowers of the island, among which the Strelitzia parrot flower, which you find on the local market. And for a stop in Bruges, a few informations about Brussels are a must. I give some information about the iconic mannequin piece and his 23 suits, new one being accepted on the occasion of an official delivery ceremony. More seriously, there is information to share about the rich Art Deco legacy or the local artists like Magritte. I always suggest some interesting purchases during your visits or excursions. So I will now leave you with these fantastic Sicilian potteries, which were one of my suggestions of souvenirs to bring back or have sent home if you call into a Sicilian port. Thank you so much for watching.